Good morning, and welcome to the Brenda Perryman Show right here on TV 33, WHPR, Comcast 90 in Detroit, and all over the world, courtesy of the World Wide Web. I have a great show for you this morning. You're going to learn a lot. You need to write down some things, and we're going to be talking about human resources, getting hired for that job, but also about if you have a small business and you're deciding to hire someone, even if it's two people, you need to know what we're going to say. So get your pen and paper out, and I have with me Sherry Strong Watkins. I can't help but say your middle name. Sherry is the CEO of Four Dimensions Consulting, and we're going to talk about a lot. Okay, so good morning.
Good morning.
We always, so many of us who have gone to look for a job. What was your first job?
Gosh, my first job, I was a receptionist at a Catholic church rectory. I was in the 11th grade in high school, and I did some receptionist work every other weekend.
At what church?
It was called Our Lady Queen of Heaven.
Oh, yeah, I know that church. Catholic school girl, graduated from a Catholic school.
Same here.
Yes. And so you were
I was a receptionist. I did a little bit of typing and filing. I answered phones for the pastor there, and it was just a weekend job.
So you had that grace and style to be able to do that and say good afternoon.
Yes.
Yes. Well, some people just answer the phone, hello, but you have to do more than that when you're dealing with a business and so forth. So let's get a little history on you.
Sure.
Now, you grew up right here in Highland Park, correct?
I did grow up in Highland Park, attended Willard Elementary School.
Over on Hamilton?
In Hamilton, it's gone now.
I know.
Yes, it's gone. I'm sad about that. But attended school there. My family and I moved to Detroit right at the end of 5th grade, and I attended Detroit Middle School, the Detroit Middle School called Farwell Middle School.
Over on Outer Drive.
On Outer Drive in Finland. And then from there, I attended St. Florian High School in Hamtramck.
Yes.
They're closed. From there, I attended Michigan State for 2 years, transferred to Wayne State, earned my undergraduate degree in design and merchandising.
Design and merchandising.
It was in design and merchandising. Isn't that a switch?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. So then I was in college, actually, when I got my first management job at the Gap. I was an assistant store manager.
Well, did you come in there? You were still in college?
I was still in college.
And so you came in there, did you sell clothes at first, or a cashier or something?
So I did. At first, I was a sales associate where I sold clothes, rang register, did a little bit of inventory.
Yeah.
I completed their 15-month management internship program, and was offered the assistant manager position before graduating from college.
Well, that's great. That's
Yes.
great. You know, it's funny. In high school, I worked at Ford Hospital in the summers. All I wanted to do was be a worker. I never thought about management, and that even went into my teaching career. I don't know, just always a worker bee. I said with management, I always was interested in doing a lot of other things, and with management, you have to stay a little longer and so forth. So, did you like being in management?
I did enjoy being in management, and I will tell you, primarily in any management role that I held, I was always assigned some HR-related task.
Okay,
So
because that's what I was going to ask you, how you got into human resources.
Yes, so I was in charge of interviewing and hiring and training and development.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and I enjoyed that, but of course I managed the staff and I was responsible for forecasting.
Well, as far as interviewing, how did you know what to do?
So I was trained. I was trained on what type of questions to ask and to ensure that whatever questions I asked was in alignment with the job description, because you want to make sure you're hiring the right person for the job that you're interviewing for.
Yes.
So that was critical. So it all started with the job description. And then I would do role play. in training classes with other managers who were learning. We would do a role play, and then after the role play, we were evaluated and told, what we did right, what we did wrong, and given tips on what to do in the
Excellent.
future.
Excellent. Excellent. So you went to Wayne, you graduated from Wayne.
Graduated
and
from Wayne.
Then what?
Worked at the Gap for a couple years. Then I went into food management for Kroger food stores.
Kroger. Okay.
Yes, I worked for Kroger for about 8 years. I went in as a co-manager. That's what they call their assistant store managers. They had a 20-week management program that was pretty
Wow.
intense.
20 weeks.
20 weeks. 20 weeks. And then from there, that role, I went into human resources as an HR specialist, where I was responsible for training and development for over 136 stores in Michigan.
And Kroger?
With Kroger.
Oh, okay.
In Michigan. And then I was promoted to a senior HR role, which allowed me to have some exposure to labor relations.
And that's important.
Yes.
That's very important.
Yes. And then from there, I was promoted to the assistant manager of human resources, where I was responsible for labor relations for the whole division.
Gee, now you were on the side of management,
I was on the side of management.
and they had a union.
Yes, we dealt with two unions.
Oh, okay.
Two unions, United Food and Commercial Workers Union. So I would meet with the business agent and the employee to resolve their issues at what they call the third step. There were 3 steps to the grievance process.
Okay.
So I handled the third step, and whenever there wasn't a resolution, at the end of the third step, it would go to arbitration. But I had the good fortune to only have one case to go to arbitration, and it was decided in our favor.
So you were able to settle things prior to arbitration for the most part,
Yes.
right? Well, that's a skill in and of itself. What do you think made you be able to do that? I mean, the way you think. I mean, you're management, but are you able to understand what's happening on the other side or the other person's point of view at times?
Absolutely, because I was the employee before.
Yes.
I gained my management experience, so I know what it's like on the other side. And it's interesting in human resources, you have to understand both the employee side and the employer side.
Yes.
As a HR professional, you're an advocate for the employee, and for the employer, you are an advisor and a counselor, helping them to ensure that they're in compliance with what the federal law states about how you handle employees. And it's a balancing act.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, what about a business that does not have a union? What kind of recourse do employees have?
Absolutely. So again, human resources plays a huge role in that. And managers require a lot of training in order to understand, again, how to handle issues with employees.
Right, right. So I'm going to get to your consulting firm.
Okay.
I want to know how that happened. So after Kroger, what happened?
So after Kroger, I took some time off. I actually went on maternity leave. And I took an extended maternity leave and stayed at home with my son for 11 years.
Oh, wow.
I did. But by the time he was of school age, I was a little stir crazy because I wanted to have some adult conversations and get back into the working world. So I did do some part-time work in retail. And then once he turned 11, I decided that I wanted to re-enter the workforce full-time.
You know, you made me laugh. I thought about this. I remember having my last child, and after I had her in August, I thought I could go back to work maybe 6 weeks later, but I contracted pneumonia, so the doctor kept me out till November. And the day the babysitter walked in the house, I ran out the back door. I couldn't wait to get to work. I applaud you for doing that. I'm sure that set a good foundation for your son, you being home.
I believe that it did, and how I ended up there is that's what my mom did for us. My mom
Oh, yes.
stayed at home with me until I was able to go to school. She did it with my other siblings, so
Yes.
I just kind of followed that pattern. And I believe it did set a good foundation for him.
Yes,
He's a good
I'm
kid.
sure it did. Yes, yes. So you should be proud, very, very proud. I know you are. So you went back 11 years.
After 11 years, so I started looking to get back into HR, and what I was finding is that, employers were looking for an HR professional who had either a master's degree or an HR certification, and I wasn't getting any phone calls. So I decided to enroll into Central Michigan University and earn my master's degree, and I actually earned it in Human Resources Administration. But after about a month after I enrolled, I got a phone call from a friend. And she asked me, she said, "Are you still interested in going back into human resources?" And I said, "I am." And I had given her my resume months prior. And she said, "Well, I work at Motown Museum, and our chairwoman is looking to start an HR department here, and she'd like to interview you. Can you come in tomorrow?" So I set up an appointment to meet with her the following week. I met with her. I came in for a second interview and met with her and the interim CEO at the time, and they offered me the job.
Yes.
So I started as an HR manager there. After about 4 years, I was promoted to a director at Motown Museum, and it was a great experience. That was my first nonprofit experience, and as you
Right.
know, there's a lot going on at
Lot,
Motown Museum.
a lot going
Yes.
on, and they posted. Well, I think I'd already seen that thing about the Motown Museum and how it has, the visual for the future, the
Yes.
panoramic view. Wonderful. I'm
Yeah.
so excited about it.
We all are. It's a lot of work. And the venue is going to be beautiful when it's finally built in the next couple years.
Yes.
So we're excited.
Yes. I can't wait. I think the whole city is excited because as small as that place is, people come from all over the world to see it.
They do. We see 92,000 visitors a year, believe it or not.
Golly. And I've brought people there, and they love it. My cousins came in just for a day or so, and it was too late to make a reservation, but they sure came, and they ran in the gift shop, and they bought some things,
Yes.
and then we had to take pictures, in front of that. And I've been to, some of the affairs this past year, and they were really, really nice. But so, when did you decide to start Four Dimensions Consulting?
So I decided to start Four Dimensions Consulting Group late 2017. And I was just in a point in my life where I felt like I wasn't doing enough, and I really was not working in my purpose to my potential. And I'm a spiritual person, so I prayed about it, and I meditated about it, and the small voice said to me, "Four Dimensions."
Wow.
And I said, "What am I doing with four dimensions?" So I'm Googling it and trying to figure out, what does this mean? And then I just kept praying about it. And a small voice said, "Do what you already know to do." So that's how Four Dimensions
Just
Consulting.
enhance on it.
Absolutely.
So, what is the goal? I want my small business owners, or people who think they're small and mid-sized business owners, and people who think that they are going to start a business. There are some things that are very important as far as human resources and getting people to work for you.
Absolutely.
And so forth. So, I'm going to start a small business.
Okay.
And I want to hire, I think I can just hire two people.
Okay.
I'm making cakes and all this stuff, and the demand is high. So what am I looking for?
So what you're looking for, you don't need a whole lot of HR support, but what you do want to make sure you have an understanding of is understanding how to write an effective, complete, concise job description. Because when you're hiring people, you want to make sure that you're hiring the right people for the type of work that you're hiring for. So you want to make sure that your job description outlines specifically what that job entails. And then you want to ensure that when you write your interview questions, that your interview questions are legal interview questions.
Okay.
Because you can't answer questions
Wow.
that
I didn't
don't.
even think of something like that legal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can't ask questions that don't apply to the job.
Okay.
So that's where I would start. And then once you do that and you've gone through the interviewing process. Once the employee gets started, you want to make sure that you give them a warm welcome as they're starting and making sure that they have the resources and the tools that they need to do their
And
job.
making sure that they understand what the job is and what is expected of
Absolutely.
them. Now, can you give me an example of, you don't have to name the small business, but say a small business that has, how many employees generally does a small business have?
So a small business can have anywhere from 1 to 50 employees.
Okay, okay. So can you name, have you had people come to you after they've started the business and have hired people, or some people know to come to you probably before they start hiring?
Some people don't realize that they need human resources services until something happens. So it could be a wrongful termination lawsuit.
Oh, okay.
It could be a performance issue that's getting out of hand and the employer doesn't know how to handle it. That's when they realize, you know what, I
Oh.
need to bring in human resources to help me identify what the problems are and help me to resolve these types of issues.
Well, tell me this. Do employers ever use outside people to do their hiring?
They do. They do. There are staffing agencies out there, like Kelly Services is one. There are firms like mine who specialize in recruiting. And then you have executive level search firms as well who will either the employer can hire them or the job seeker can hire them to help them find employment.
Okay, now that's what I want to know. Job seekers, they can find a, what is it, headhunter firm?
They can find a headhunter, yes. They can find a headhunter to help them find work because typically at that level, you're a full-time executive and you just don't have the time to invest to do the search.
Right.
So they'll hire someone to do the search for them.
And do they actually at the end, okay, say if they hire someone to do that search and hire, and then they hire, the search party hires someone, do they get to see that executive prior to this person being submitted for the job? Does the executive want to see that person?
So typically not. Typically, the employer looks at the resume to determine whether or not they want to interview, and the recruiter will screen the candidate for the job seeker for the employer.
Right.
So they'll screen them, and they may even call them back for a second interview, and then they'll submit that resume.
Okay. Wrongful termination, you use that.
Yes.
And I'm sure people have heard of that. Or termination, that means you lost your job. The boss has relieved you of your duties,
Yes,
right? And so sometimes they get the EEOC involved, don't they?
Absolutely. And, with wrongful terminate,
Equal Employment.
Opportunity Commission.
Right.
Yes. So with wrongful employment, that happens when the employee feels like the employer discharged them unjustifiably. They could feel as though, the employer had something against them. Maybe it was age discrimination. Maybe it was race discrimination. Maybe the employee felt like there was some kind of nepotism going on and they were pushed out of the company to make room for the employer's friend or
relative.
Absolutely. So in those situations, yes, the former employee will go out and seek assistance from the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and then they have to submit a statement and a complaint, and then EEOC takes it over and they reach out to the employer and they ask the employer questions about the termination, and the employer has to be able to support the termination.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know. People should keep notes. I mean, you got to keep, it's very important that you do that, isn't that?
Absolutely. I tell my clients if it's not documented, it didn't happen.
Oh, God, right. Absolutely. It's just your word.
It's your word against theirs. Absolutely. So
you hear that, everyone? Keep notes, dates and times and all of that.
absolutely. If it's related to productivity, examples of poor performance, every conversation that you have, you want to document it. If it's a performance evaluation where that person was scored low, you want to make sure that's recorded as well, because that's going to support your case in terminating that employee. And if you can't defend that, you may end up paying legal fees, back pay to the employee. Sometimes they will require you to allow the employee to return back to work. Most employees don't return back because they
Right.
don't want to return back, but there's a cost to not documenting properly.
Right. So let's talk about Four Dimensions Consulting and what are the major areas that you do? What do you
Absolutely,
do?
yes. So we offer HR services
Tell my
to
audience.
sure. We offer HR services,
And that's human resources.
Yes.
They used to just call it personnel.
They did a long
Back in
time
the
ago.
day,
Yes,
yes.
that's when it was just what they called paper pushing.
Oh, really?
Yes. Now it's a lot more broader. There are more facets to human resources. So, for instance, the services that I offer to small and mid-sized businesses are HR compliance, consulting, comprehensive training, and also organizational assessments. And organizational assessments is when we come into your organization to assess your culture. Maybe you may be having some low morale issues with your staff and you're trying to figure out how to boost morale for your employees. It could be that you have high turnover and you want to figure out why people are not staying at your organization.
Wow. Wow. Now, stop right there. You're able to help that employer figure that out.
Absolutely.
What are some of the reasons that people don't stay?
So what I'm seeing now is people do not stay because they it's not that they're leaving their job, they're leaving bad leaders. So, it's on the leadership side where there may need to be some training in how to engage your staff, how to manage your staff, having emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is all about self-awareness.
That's what I wanted to know. Can you break that down a little more for us? Emotional intelligence. I hear that a lot, too.
Yes, emotional intelligence is about being aware of how you come across to people and also being aware of the signals and the behaviors that you observe from other people that you're engaging with and being able to adjust your behavior so that you are not being offensive, dismissive, or incompassionate towards your employees. So that's what emotional intelligence is about.
And you have to really be self-aware.
You have
You
to.
have to. And a lot of times people don't look at themselves and what they're doing and how they're coming across. I'm the boss and I can come across any way I want. But people will take that to a certain point, and if they find something better, they will leave.
That's true. That's very true.
Boy.
So I do a workshop on emotional intelligence through my firm. It's a half-day course, and if we do it in person, it's a half-day course. I also have e-training, and that's about a 2-hour course.
Okay, e-training, you do it on the
Online.
computer-
It's online, yes.
Now, can a business or an organization have you come in and do like that for their organization?
Absolutely. And what I do is when I talk to the business owner about the type of training they're seeking, I ask them questions to try to get an idea of what they're looking for in terms of an outcome. So I customize the training to the outcome that they're seeking.
Okay, and their business.
Then their business, yes.
Right. Now, do you do anything for employees?
Not in my firm. Not the firm doesn't offer necessarily employee services. My services are primarily for the employer, the small to mid-sized employer.
And the goal is for them to optimize the employees, optimize the productivity, right?
Optimize productivity, which I would call human capital, and to build more revenue for your organization, because the more talented your staff is, the happier that they are working for your establishment, the more productive they'll be, and the more successful your business will be.
And repeat business is what
Repeat business is what you want.
Right, right, what they want. And so the training that you do, because I have some pictures here, and I saw some on your website where this person, is that you?
That's me.
Oh, is talking to a group.
Yes.
What kind of group is this?
So that was a workshop that I did on social media in the workplace a couple years ago in front of the National Association of African Americans in Human Resources Michigan chapter's membership. I actually sat on the board there as well, but I facilitated that workshop to help HR professionals understand how to manage social media in the workplace.
Now, what do you mean by that? Managing social media. Social media is so big.
It's huge, and the laws around it change all the time because social technology is so rapid. So, the basis of this training program was to help them to understand how to write a policy around social media, recognizing that although, the organization has rights as it pertains to what employees share about them on social media, but also understanding that employees have rights too. And we can't violate those rights within our policy to ensure that the messages that are being shared on social media are positive.
Okay. Now, are employees allowed to do personal things on their work computers?
So the only time employees should be doing using social media on their work computer is for work-related activities.
Okay.
Yes.
Boy, I know a lot of people say, "Oh, really?" Really, I just wrote Joe a message, I'll see you at 6. But because a lot of people don't realize that what you write on the computer can be researched and found, people can find out what you're doing.
Absolutely. And even in the job search, you just want to be careful with what you post on social media.
Absolutely. That's very important.
Yes, and even as a student, you want to be careful of what you post on social media because once you apply for a job and during a background check, if the employer says that they're going to look at your social media sites, you don't want anything derogatory about yourself on that site.
Or you don't want them seeing a picture of you dressed in a thong and a bustier.
That's correct.
I mean, there's certain things you don't want people to see.
Absolutely.
And I think already that people reveal too much on social media sometimes. And I had a cousin. Young cousin. I think she might be 30 something now. But anyway, she took this man to task on social media and I inboxed her and I said, "You don't want to do that because you're exposing too much of what your emotional thing and what this person is doing to you and how it's affected you." And she said, "Cousin Brenda," she wrote me back, "Cousin Brenda, I can say what I want. I'm grown, blah, blah, blah." I said, okay, therein goes the lesson. You try to tell people that way too much is shared on social media.
It is, and it's shared to the world.
To the world.
To the world.
And I've seen things on television and then name somebody. I'll go and say, "I wonder if this person's on Facebook." And you see the person's on, you never know. You never know.
That's true.
Really, there's a responsibility when you're dealing with social media.
It's a huge responsibility. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about as it relates to the workplace. So if you have an incident with an employee at work and you're really upset about it and you just feel like you need a place to vent, social media is not the place to vent. You don't want to share that on social media because if you're friends with that person, then their friends can see what's been posted. They can feel like you're attacking them on social media, and then it becomes your employer's business. So now you have your human resources department, if you have one, or either your supervisor reviewing your social media site about this thing that you posted on social media. So the best thing to do is stay neutral about work-related issues on social media and find out, to the employee, find out what your supervisor allows for you to post as it pertains to their organization.
Right. That's very, very important. Very important. So you do training for that, about that.
I do. I do
Right.
for the employer.
And I had asked you about behavioral interviewing. Now, I remember when I was leaving Highland Park to teach, I had been teaching here about 17 and a half years, something like that. And going to another district. I used to think I'd be in Highland Park for the rest of my life. And then I had some circumstances in my personal life where I said, I got to go, I need to make some more money. And so I applied. And I remember going to personnel, and they had you take a little assessment test
Yes.
of how would you feel about this, different things. What is that for?
So the assessment tests, depending on what the specific text is to assess where you are, where your skill level is. So if it's a typing test, then you need to be able to type 65 words per minute.
65.
If it's
That's
65.
when I was 18. That's when I was 18. I was used to jam on that typewriter.
Yes. So the employer may have you do a typing test to see how fast you type per minute.
Okay. Oh, but what I'm talking about, I think more so, is how you respond to certain things. I remember the test. It was like, what would you do if this happened?
Yes.
And they have multiple choices. And that's a way, to me, it seemed to be a way to assess my responses to things, my feelings about things, even character issues.
Yes, you're right. And it also examines temperament.
Yeah.
What will make you tick, what will cause you to become upset and maybe not be able to handle an issue, how calm you respond to certain things, what's your stress level. If you study the test that you take pretty well, you'll notice that they will ask you the same question 5 different times in a different way to see consistency in your behavior as well.
Oh, okay. You hear that, everybody? You hear that?
Yes.
Wow. And I remember having to write out something. This is so crazy. It was early August. I remember it was real hot, and I was at Southfield. And you had to write an essay about something, how you deal with a certain situation and so forth. And after I left, I wrote it out because I had dealt with a lot of different things and had been fairly successful at it. And so when I left, I got in my car, and I remember going home and saying, did I spell that word wrong? It was one word. I don't know if it was recognition or recommendation. It was something. Do you know that drove me crazy for days? Oh, I think I spelled a word wrong. I
Yes.
won the spelling bee in 6th grade. I'm not supposed to be able to do that. But, little things like that, I said, they'll never call me. But they did, So do employers sometimes allow for little mistakes?
They do allow for a little mistakes. They understand that, people come into those tests pretty nervous.
Yeah.
So, there's criteria that they're looking for that'll stand out more so than maybe a misspelling of a word
Yeah.
that they will take under consideration.
Right. And that particular year, it had been like hundreds of people applying. So, and I think they hired a small number. And I was fortunate to be one of those people, And it's funny because I think employees or potential employees should get information on their prospective employer. Get as much information as you can. Wouldn't you say that?
I would agree, and unfortunately, that's not happening with as much information that's being shared on the internet. People are just not doing the research, and it's important to do the research.
Just to see even what the business is about and the services they offer and how it might be a good fit for you.
Absolutely. And when you do that, it shows the employer that you truly have interest in the organization. You're thinking ahead of time about what value you can bring to them. And when you go in and you say, I had an opportunity to look at your website, and I'll just use Motown Museum for an example. I looked at your website. I see that you're growing, and I know that you need to hire new people for your growth. Tell me about that. How many employees do you plan to hire? And then be able to connect whatever that answer is to what value you can bring to the institution.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yes. Now, when I was teaching high school, I used to do, and when I was teaching public speaking, I used to do employer employee. I had the kids fill out little applications I made up and all sorts of things, and they had to one had to be an employer, one had to be the employee, and then they'd switch. Now I'm the employee, and they had to, as time went on, it became resumes they had to fill out and so forth, and they had to practice, and they had to show there were certain things you do not do in a job interview.
Absolutely.
Can you talk about those?
Yes. So, for example, in the first interview, you don't talk about compensation. Compensation is not something that you want to talk about first. Again, the employer.
That's great.
Yes.
I remember, because really, technically, Southfield was my second job. I started off teaching in Highland Park. I graduated from college Sunday and started teaching Monday, as far as
Yes.
professional. So it had been all those years down the pike, and here I was in another job interview. I was 40 as opposed to being 21 or 22.
Yes.
And so, but I never asked about the money. And it was him who said, "Wouldn't you like to know how much money you would make?" I said, "Oh, I forgot."
So there are some employers who will ask you about that, and of course, then it's okay to speak on that.
Right.
But if they don't ask you first, I would just focus on what value you bring to the institution, your interest in wanting to learn more about the institution, the culture of the organization. Is the job a little bit broader than what's outlined on the job description? That's where I would recommend the job seeker's focus be. Another thing that I would not do in an interview is chew gum.
Oh, of course. Of course.
What else?
The way you dress.
The way you dress.
Let's talk about that.
The way you
for
dress.
ladies and for men.
Absolutely. So I know that the culture's changed, the times have changed, trends have changed, but you still want to go to the interview looking very professionals. So ladies, your skirt shouldn't be more than 2 inches above your knee.
And that bustier has to go.
The bustier has to go. So don't show cleavage. Don't wear excessive makeup. Keep your jewelry modest. Professional hairstyle. For the gentlemen, make sure.
Well, let's talk about that now.
Okay.
Because as far as, okay, I wear locks. Some people have fros, which I've had every hairstyle in the book. I'm not going to change my hair,
Nor should you. So as long as your hair is neat and groomed well, that's not an issue.
Okay.
And let me speak a little bit broader on that. That's not an issue for most employers. There are some employers who frown upon that, but if they don't accept who you are, and if it doesn't fit with your culture, their culture, then that's not the right place for you to be. Because the organization also has an image that they're projecting and a culture.
Absolutely.
So if your appearance does not fit with their culture, then it's not a good place for you to be.
I understand that. Now, what about men?
Men, make sure your shoes are clean, your suit is pressed. You don't necessarily have to wear a suit jacket, but I would wear a tie to an interview.
Let me give you an example of something. My son is an executive for a big company.
Yes.
And they don't have as many African Americans as they should have. And he really wanted to have this. I hired this young black man who was coming. Now, he was interviewing several people. The white guy who was being interviewed, he was there like 15, 20 minutes prior to the interview. He had on a suit jacket and everything. Ryan interviewed him and so forth. Then it was time for the black guy, and Ryan looked in the parking lot. The guy was still driving around in the parking lot, It was time, and so Ryan said, "Okay, that's okay." And then the guy came with just a shirt and tie. Didn't even bother to have a suit jacket, just in case. You see, when you are walking into some place that you don't know, it's better to be safe than sorry, don't you think?
I do agree with that, and let me clarify. When I say you don't necessarily have to have a suit jacket, you could wear a cardigan sweater. You could wear a vest if it's summertime and it's just a little too warm for a suit jacket. And to your point about the arrival time, you do want to arrive at least no more than 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes prior to your interview. If you arrive too earlier, it could make the interviewer a little bit nervous and feel rushed.
Right.
If you arrive too early, 10 to 15 minutes is usually the standard.
Okay, what about this? And I've talked about this on the show before. There was this one guy, and Ryan was really, he said, man, you have to go into this other interview with the even higher ups.
Yes.
And so the guy goes into that interview, and it's like a little panel of people. They ask him for his resume. He takes out his cell phone and gives them his resume on a cell phone. That just blew his job. He didn't get the job.
Right.
So talk about that cell phone thing, because I've seen, even in auditions, I've seen people with a cell phone on I don't even like it on a theater audition. I mean, you're tied to this phone.
Right.
What is that?
Right. So your cell phone should be on silent during your interview. Always come to the interview prepared with at least 5 resumes. If you know ahead of time that you're going to be speaking to a panel, I would call ahead and ask, how many people will I be interviewing within this panel interview, to ensure that you have enough copies of your resume to share with them. Having a device during an interview, it's a distraction. It's a distraction for you, and it's a distraction for the employer.
Absolutely, absolutely. These are things we have to be aware of.
Yes.
And sometimes, what about engaging in small talk when you come in? Because sometimes I don't think all employers go straight into, and I see you're here, you're this and that. Sometimes people engage in a little bit of small talk, and that's good. And then, why do employers do that sometimes?
Employers engage in small talk because they know that the interviewee may be a little nervous. So they use that as an opportunity to help them to relax and put them at ease, make them to feel comfortable, and then they ease into the interview.
Okay, very good, very good. So it's very important how you come in there, because that's that first impression. Talk about first impressions.
First impressions is the lasting impression. So if you walk into an interview and you're chewing gum, if you're a woman, you have on really big earrings, your cleavage is showing, what you're communicating to the supervisor
You're
is that...
sexy. No, I'm just kidding.
Well...
I'm kidding. I am kidding. I mean, you shouldn't do that.
Well, it's definitely not professional.
I know.
So that's the first thing. It's not professional, and it could, it indicates that you're not serious about the job as well. So that's what the employer is gonna remember. But even before the interview, when you submit an application or a resume, if there are several grammatical errors on either of those documents, if there are food stains, or
right.
if the formatting of the resume.
I'm laughing because my mother said, you used to say, you could always tell when black people been there, there's grease on it stuff. That was my mother, She was a perfectionist.
Of course.
I couldn't live up to that. But anyway, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. What you have should be neat. It should be proper. It should be in a folder if you have to bring something, or an envelope.
Or a portfolio.
Yes.
If the formatting of the resume is not inappropriate, but if it's just not aligned properly, if the font is too small to read, if you have your name on the resume in all small letters, that speaks to the quality of work that you'll produce. So you want to make sure that your resume is well formatted. There are several templates online that you can use as a guide to help you format your resume. With your application, complete the application in its entirety, because if you don't, that shows that you don't finish work that you start, or maybe that you're trying to hide something.
Oh, good point. Now, what things are on applications now that, or not on applications now that used to be? I heard that some things they've taken off of applications, like what is it's still the felony thing? Is that still on?
So you can ask about, you can ask, have you ever been convicted of a crime? But that's the extent of the line of questioning about that. And even still, you cannot hold that. Well, if they were convicted of a crime, you can look into that through your background check to find out what type of crime it is and determine whether or not this person would be considered for employment for your institution. But if it's something minor and you hold that against the job seeker, there could be some liability.
Okay,
Involved.
so as far, let's kind of get back to the employees and what you do, employers and what you do. So
Yes.
you're really helping them make good selections, be able to create a good culture
Yes.
in their organization. Talk to that, because I have a former student who, she's great. In fact, she was my drama student. And she is now working for Chrysler Corporation, and she's developing the culture for the new Chrysler plant. What do we talk about? What do we mean when we talk culture?
We're talking about a respectful work environment. We're talking about a place where people feel included, where their ideas are considered or just heard. People feel like there's opportunity for growth. People feel like they're valued. So when you think about culture, it's all those things encompassed so that the employee can enjoy working for your institution.
And I suppose you tell the employer also that, listen to ideas, because sometimes employees come with some decent ideas, don't you think?
I think so. And, if there is an idea presented that you can't implement, explain that to the employee. And it doesn't have to be great high-level detail, but they need to understand, what your goal is, what your mission is, and maybe their idea doesn't align with the goal and the mission of the organization. So explain to them, this, we can't do this because, we're moving in this type of direction, and that doesn't align with what we're doing. And they will appreciate and respect that more than if you just listen and don't respond at all.
Well, do you deal with or talk to employers about incentives?
Absolutely.
Can we talk to that?
Yes. So part of retaining and attracting good employees is to offer incentives. So whether it's a benefits plan, or you have an anniversary program, or you have a holiday party every year, or you give a bonus for productivity or commission or something.
Or attendance.
Or for attendance, absolutely.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
That is so important. That is, I heard on some jobs you could almost be, have a lot of other flaws, but attendance is the thing that could get you fired.
Attendance can get you fired. Employers need to know that they can depend on you to be there when they need you to be there. And if you're not there, or if you are habitually late, you can slow down productivity. You can hamper tasks from being completed. And if you are a service environment where you have customers coming to make purchases to your organization, you can also impact their experience. And we all know that when you're a customer and you have a bad experience, you don't want to come back, and you'll tell other people about that, and it gets spread a lot sooner than your excellent experience is spread.
Let's talk about something you hit on earlier. We were talking about social media, employees maybe not getting along with other employees. What is a way for an employer, what should they do? You have, and they could be two good employees,
Right.
but they're having the friction, and that causes things within the company. What can happen? What can you do?
So the employer needs to be alerted that there's an issue to start with, and then once the employer learns that there is an issue, I would recommend that the employer sit down with each employee individually to find out from each one of them what their perspective is on what happened. And then I would bring them together and serve as a mediator to help them to resolve their issue.
And if it can't get resolved, somebody probably has to go
Well,
or something. I don't know. What do you
right.
do?
So-
what do you do? Or just ignore that person? What do you?
so if you ignore it, it's going to cause bigger issues.
I mean, would you tell the people involved with the friction to ignore that?
Well, you offer a couple different options. You ask them, can you work together respectfully and just not be friends?
Right.
If that's not an option, if there's an opportunity to put them in different areas, or maybe they don't work on
Right.
projects together,
Right.
that's a possibility. If you can't resolve it that way, then sometimes either the employee or the employer will decide that one of them will have to go if it can't get resolved.
Right. And if you like your job and your money, interesting. Now, so you have something coming up. It's with the Hub Group, Detroit Business Hub Group. Could you tell everybody what that is? And
Yes, so the Detroit Business Hub Group is an association where there is a group of professional business owners who offer their services to startup companies who could not necessarily afford our services. And I'm actually a member of this group. And we have a reception coming up on Wednesday, March 11th. It's going to be held at ELE Wealth Management in Southfield.
Ellis Liddell,
Ellis
who's
Liddell.
on my show all the time.
Absolutely. And the event is from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's a free event. And if you're interested in attending, you can RSVP through the Detroit Business Hub website or on Facebook or through Eventbrite.
So if you're getting ready to start a business, maybe you haven't even started it yet.
Right.
You need some information. How do I do this? It would be good to go. And those people who watch the show know Ellis is a stand-up businessman, and I must congratulate him because, there's going to be a Southern Classic here in September with, I think it's Tennessee State against Southern. Something like that. Anyway, Cheryl Ajamu, who's also on my show a lot, she's putting it on, and Ellis Liddell, they bought 1,000 tickets.
Wow, that's great.
Isn't that great?
That's
They're going to have
great.
so many great activities around this event, but the Hub Group, they're going to have a video debut, a red carpet reception, and once again, that's Wednesday, March 11th at ELE Wealth Management at 18700 West 10 Mile Road in Southfield. RSVP at 248-346-5068. Facebook, look on Facebook events or Eventbrite about it. So the title of it is, I'm trying to see.
So it is we're calling it the Detroit Business Hub Group reception, red carpet reception.
Okay. I may have to come down to this and see what's happening.
You should.
I would like to. I'd like to explore stuff, so I'd like to do that.
We'd love to have
This
you.
is very, very helpful. Very, very helpful. And how could they contact you, Sherry?
Sure. So to contact me, you can reach me at 313-575-1268. You may also visit my website at www.dimensions consult.biz. Again, my website is www.4dconsult.biz. And please feel free to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Wow. Listen, everyone, you saw her here. She's all over the place doing wonderful things, and I applaud you so much.
Thank
And
you.
she has a wonderful family. I tell you, she's the one I didn't teach. There were others in the family that I did, even when I was student teaching. How many kids were there?
There's 6 of us.
Gee whiz.
There are 6 of us.
Great parents.
Wonderful parents.
Great parents. Now, stay tuned. We have a very special table talk for you. And we have the Detroit Repertory Theater. And then I have Christopher Grizzly Huff. He's strong. And he's going to talk to us about getting in shape, something I've been trying to do. I dream about it, at least. And He'll be on. So stay tuned. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Thank you so much, Harry. This
Thank
was
you.
wonderful,
Thanks for
wonderful,
having me.
wonderful information. Get the job you want.